Hi, Terry.
Hi there, how you doing?
Hi, just fine. I have Matthias here as well in the room. We're physically in the office today, both me and Matthias. So let's see. I can bring up our camera as well. I think. There we go. Oh.
Yep.
Moving on. It's quite dark. Was it better?
That looks good.
Oh, okay. Should have been zoomed in, but anyway. So I think that Yolanda at least will join. I saw just before the meeting now that Andrea had some issues, so he couldn't join. I was hoping I should join. But let's wait a minute or so for Yolanda. Hi, Yolanda. Hi, Brad.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, welcome. So I guess we can get started. I don't know who should join more. Hi, Brad. So I was hoping Andrea had prepared this meeting and was supposed to be here, but apparently he got some inavailability, so he couldn't join. I don't know why. So I haven't prepared anything for this now. I haven't even looked into the agenda. So I guess we can just, if you have anything you would like to bring up, please do. We could continue, Yolanda, with your thoughts there on the GitHub Actions. Maybe that's one thing. And then we could also discuss the website with Terry. That's interesting. Those are my main initial ideas, at least. Have any preferences or other thoughts?
Works for me.
Works for me.
So Yolanda, are you there?
Yes. Yeah, fine. Yeah.
Is there anything you would like to clarify or discuss further on the GitHub Actions part you're starting on?
Emil?
Yes.
Is that me? I think GitHub Actions is something Vibhav is taking care, right? Is working on, right?
Sorry. Sorry, I'm mistaken. Yeah, you're right.
So yeah, I'll be with Spinnaker.
Of course.
Yeah, so we have done the POC and the recent in the Spinnaker summit, and that happened in Detroit. So we have had a presentation there to show like how Spinnaker will be integrating with CDEvents. So we demoed the part where we have integrated the Spinnaker into the existing POC that is developed by Andrea and Salabai initial CDEvents time. So yeah, so that's the update, and we had a chance to meet many of the Spinnaker folks there and talk about this POC, and I had some couple of comments also, like how we can integrate actually this Spinnaker into the CDEvents POC or actual CDEvents implementation to the Spinnaker.
Right.
Yeah.
So of course, I'm so sorry. I was thinking about Vibhav when I saw your name there. So of course, yeah. Now Vibhav is here as well. So
yeah. Yep.
Welcome, Vibhav.
Hi guys.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm good.
Perfect.
How are you guys? How's everyone?
Yeah. Quite all right, I guess. All of us. So yeah, I just started to say that I was hoping Andrea should be here. I more or less share the meeting, but he's not. So I guess we need to do it in some kind of cooperation at least. But one idea there, Vibhav, is that we could talk about GitHub Actions more if you're interested in discussing that further. Is there anything there, Vibhav, that you would like to dig deeper into?
Sure. So I started working on a POC for GitHub Actions with Brad's help. So yesterday, Brad shared the POC that he usually works with me for CDEvents, and based off of some of that, I got an idea on how I would create an adapter for GitHub Actions, CDEvents adapter for GitHub Actions, and based on that, I'm working on a POC. I can share the repo. So a little bit of a disclaimer. I started work on the POC like an hour ago, so it's definitely uh, not the best. Where I'm blocked at is I'm not actually able to. I'm forming the CD event, but I'm not able to send the CD event. Um, I can for now go ahead and show you what I'm exactly doing. I'll just share the screen if that's okay with you guys.
Perfect.
Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So, so as I said, like it's a very basic implementation. So how I started was I tried to get the event payload in the first place, of what the event looks like. So I dumped the GitHub Actions context and try to get a payload which I can work with. So what I'm looking for is this event name, that is pull request, and event action open to create my first CD event mapping. So this will be mapped to uh, the change created CD event. Now going back here.
Just something I remembered.
Yeah.
If someone makes a pull request, and is this after they merge the pull request that will go, or when they raise the pull request?
This is when they raise the pull request.
Yeah. One thing you have to keep in mind is that you can edit the pull request as well. So I think there's 3 events where you might have to do a bit of scenarios and experimentation, because when you sync the pull request, you might get a slightly different event as well.
Yeah. So I already covered that part on like what events would come in the last call. I will show the doc to you. I don't know where it is.
It's in the notes from the last meeting, right, as well? I can add it to the agenda now.
Yeah, that'll be good. I have it here. I can just go over it once before. So based on the last meeting, these are the event mappings that were finalized for this POC. So whenever a pull request is opened, a change created event will be sent. Whenever the pull request is edited, or actually any other events from these events happen, updated event is sent. Then if a pull request is closed but not merged, then the change abandoned event is sent. If a pull request is closed and merged, because GitHub pull request will just send a closed, and we'll have to check, dig deeper and check if it is merged or not. So if that has happened, we will send a change merged event. If the event is, if the pull request is opened, we send a created event again, same as the opened event. And if the pull request is synchronized, we send an updated event again. So this is for the GitHub pull request event type. There is another event type called the pull request review event type, and the event that makes sense for us to map in this case is when a pull request review is submitted, we can create an event called change reviewed event and send that across.
Perfect. Yeah, this is well thought out.
Yeah, so I'll just go back to the demo here. So it's not really a demo, but so I have taken the payload from there and then put it in this file here called event.json, so I can work with this file locally. I am how I'm working with this in GitHub Actions itself is in GitHub Actions, I'm taking the event payload and putting it in an environment variable. So I'm dumping it in the environment variable here called GitHub context, and I'm running the Go file as a script. So I'm doing go run and then running it like this. So it is easier for me to test also locally. And for local testing, what I'm doing is I'm running this command and putting all of the event data in this environment variable and then reading it back from here in the script. So how I'm testing it is if there is a event event name is pull request and the action is open, then I send a new change created event. Currently, I'm not able to really make this work. So if I run this here, I get a invalid memory address. So I get a seg. I'm not sure why this is happening. It's been a long time since I've done Go as well. So I think it might be something related to this cloud event over here. Also, I am not really failing this anywhere, so it might be silently failing. I don't know if something's going wrong. Where I'm sending this is this link over here. It's basically I'm running Knative and I'm running the cloud events player, and I'm hoping to get this CD event on the cloud events player. So it's running over here. So I'm just like hoping to get something here.
A very technical thing. You have a star before the CE. I'm not sure if you're supposed to send a reference or if you're sending an object in. My Go knowledge is not the best, but you can check that one.
I think you need that though, because if you don't put it, if you take that star out, it won't work.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually just updated the README because the snippet was wrong as well, and I actually put the star in as well.
Yeah, I have taken this bit from your example, Adam. Sorry, I've taken this bit from your example. Right.
Okay, let me see if I can get it working.
So I'm just gonna.
We can do it after the meeting as well, if you want.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. I'm just gonna push this till then to my record.
Okay.
So any questions regarding this or any suggestions?
Do you plan to, for the action, do you plan to put a Docker file in with the action eventually, or you just use the script?
So I'm starting to feel that the Docker file might be an overkill, because if it's a simple one-pager Go script, maybe it could be just used like this, is what I'm thinking. But considering that we'll have to pull the modules for CDEvents, a Docker file might help. So not really sure about that.
I guess we just have to check if the Ubuntu latest as a GitHub action contains Go. I would assume it would.
So I've set up Go over here. and then I'm running it like this. So I did a simple check in the beginning to just parse the JSON, and it worked pretty well. So the only, I think, hurdle that will come in running this without a Dockerfile would be modules. But that also should be pretty straightforward, I'm thinking. But every time it runs, then it will have to like pull the CD event library. I don't know which is better or worse. Like, is it better to it's probably better to have the image. Maybe if we can pass the image directly over here, and instead of running in Ubuntu latest, it runs in the image, that'll be better. I don't know if that's possible to do.
Yeah, I think if the user doesn't have to like install Go and stuff in the GitHub action, it's way better. And then you just reference, like it will do it all in the back end, and they don't even need to worry about all that. And they just simply call the action.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, now think about it, it is probably better to create a image.
Because the user won't even see it, right? Because they're just calling the action.
Yes.
Whereas if they have to install Go and all that, like that's pretty tedious.
Yeah.
And it's like for adoption, it wouldn't be, in my opinion, I think it's better if they just don't know about it and they just say, get the CDEvents.
Yeah, the user experience wouldn't be good, like working with the events. And, yeah. I still have a, I don't.
What did freeze? Did we freeze? No, just a lot. No. Froze. Okay, everyone was very very still, so everything was freezing. All right, so there we go. No, can't hear it. Okay. See if he comes back. It's good, Terry, that you have a moving background, so we see that things working.
Yeah.
Okay, no, people might not come back. Okay, but Brad, you have been involved in this to some extent as well, then I understand.
Yeah, I've had experience working with GitHub Actions, so I was just giving him like some pointers on what I've done in the past.
Yeah.
So I'm just helping him. It's a fun project. Yeah.
What are the options to actually integrate the GitHub server with the deployment of the GitHub this CDEvents?
So
then?
Yeah, so you can use JavaScript. My preferred, JavaScript. I like personally to use Dockerfile and Bash. So for the entry point of the Dockerfile, you just have a Bash script, and then that can run and the user can specify what version of things that they want as well. So it works quite nicely instead of baking it into the image. So we were considering even making the SDK in JavaScript for CDEvents as well, just for fun, because I think you just want to do that one day anyway. But so really the two options are the Go file, like we showed, the JavaScript, or the Docker file with a Bash script, which works quite nicely. We lost you. You're back now.
You're back, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're, I think then we'll go that route with the Dockerfile.
No. You froze again.
Yeah, frozen again.
If there is a service,
or
if there is a cloud events player, which can be hosted on a cluster made for CDEvents, people working on CDEvents for to like play around with, because if I have to like test CDEvents as a service, like I have to push it somewhere to some HTTP service. I'll probably have to like set that up myself somewhere else and have an ingress up and all of that. So having that would be nice.
I can help you there because the Jenkins X team wants to make an adapter for CDEvents as well. So maybe that could be good to do both those projects at the same time, and then you can use their like adapter they build to sort of practice with for both sides.
Okay, I can definitely mooch off of that.
Yeah, maybe we can ask the Tecton. You probably know yourself though. You might even help make it. The Tecton adapter that they made for CDEvents. I assume it would be pretty much the same for Jenkins X as well. I'm guessing.
But I'm not sure if they have a testing instance for the community or specifically for events. I'm not sure.
We can use the Ortelius cluster if we want to test in there if we need somewhere to test.
Yeah, that'll be great actually.
And I spoke to the Jenkins X team yesterday and encouraged them to get re-engaged on this piece of work. So it's good timing to refresh that and get them working on it.
Perfect. Who in the Jenkins team was that? Was it Christopher Big, or was it called? Terry, who in Jenkins X were you talking to?
We were in the office hours meeting yesterday, so we discussed it as a group.
Okay.
Yeah, the people I was talking to were Christopher Vig and Ankit Mohapatra.
If that's correct, yeah.
Right. So how the events broker used for these these proof of concepts now, would they be deployed? I mean, if we would have these as Docker images and deployed in a cluster, would, for example, Jenkins X be in one pod, one container, and then this GitHub Actions in another one, and they communicate through a common events broker, or how would that be set up?
Yeah, so there's two ways to run GitHub Actions. Most people will run the hosted on their infrastructure, and then the other one's to run self-hosted runners that you can run in the cluster as well. But generally, it would be sitting in different infrastructure.
So there would be some events broker in between them there, or how,
when you say broker, you mean like
if we would like Jenkins X to listen to these events, for example, sent by these GitHub Actions, CDEvents, how would the Jenkins X deployment be able to listen to those messages?
So the Jenkins X has a feature called Lighthouse, which is how it currently responds to all of the events that are coming in from GitHub or whichever source code control system you're using. And I think the intention was to extend that Lighthouse functionality to accept native events. So where those events are coming from is an open question at the moment. So it's possible that there would be a broker container that you could instantiate on either side, but the formal interface with Jenkins X would be through Lighthouse.
Sure. Yeah, but that was what I was thinking, if it should be a broker container in its own, which multiple producers and consumers could connect to. So there would be one central broker, or federator of these events. How is it, Jalander, in your POC there, where you integrate multiple different tools? Are they all in the same container, or do you communicate between different containers using these events there, Jalander?
I have in Kubernetes cluster, it's kind cluster. They're existing, the CDEvents POC with Captain and Tecton exists, right?
Yeah.
So I have installed as another a pod in Kubernetes kind cluster, so they can communicate with that way.
So
But,
they're all in the same pod, you say, or?
yeah, right.
Okay.
We're in the same cluster, right?
Yeah, it's in the same cluster.
Yeah, but is there a specific pod for the broker itself, or is everything in the same? Not in the same container, is it?
Not in same containers, but there are like different pods in Kubernetes cluster.
Mm.
Yeah. So you're asking about like different tools like Tecton, Captain that we have, right? So different CI/CD tools.
Yeah, and Jenkins X would be one of those as well, then, if there would be such a POC or such implementation.
Yeah. So now Spinnaker is the one like another. It's in another namespace in Kubernetes controller. Yeah. So it can be like something else can come with different namespace in the same cluster as well again.
Mm. Okay. But Vidar, you intend to continue implementing this GitHub Actions?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had an idea where once this POC is at a point where it can be used where repositories, maybe it will be good to employ it in the Jenkins repo, Jenkins X repo, and probably have like one place where we can like collect all these events and probably do like whatever experiments for like Dora or whatever anyone wants to do. But I think it will be a good place to start getting like real-time CD events regarding pull requests, changes, and stuff. I'm guessing Tecton already must be doing it. But I feel like this could like pave way for like just experimentation with some metrics probably, which will be GitHub specific.
Mm-hmm.
And a question, at what point would we bring this repo or project into the CDEvents org for GitHub so we can make like issues and collaborate together, etc.?
Well, whenever, I would say. I mean, we can set that up more or less right away. So if you see that there's a benefit to that, of course, we can do that more or less directly.
Yeah, I think it's good for like doing a bit of planning around it, making some issues and delegating the work, etc.
Yeah, yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Of course. I could do that for you. What should the name be then? We haven't yet added any POCs, I think. Should this be considered a POC, or is it more of a...
I would like call it like a sandbox. Sort of.
GitHub Action Sandbox, or what would the decent name be, you think?
I don't know.
Is it actually a generic sandbox for anything?
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess if we create some strange name from the beginning, we won't.
You can change it, but yeah, it's not ideal. What about just as simple as like CDEvents GitHub Action or something?
Yeah.
Probably just CDEvent action.
Yeah.
I guess I'll figure something out and I can create it. And of course we can. I don't think it's as easy to rename repos in GitHub, is it? if you
I think now it is.
You reuse it again, I think. Once used, it's taken. But whatever. So I'll set something up for you there, and I guess I will put you, Brad, and Viva as main maintainers of it.
Okay.
To begin with, at least.
We would probably have to. Is there like in the org developer group that we could, because we're not part of the org as well. So
yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't really set it up, I guess, but I can invite you as. Let's see. No, none of you are there, right? Okay. So there's a member level there. If you just paste your GitHub IDs, I can add you as members there.
Sure.
Either in the chat or in the minute. Yeah, thanks.
I've shared the repo in the chat, just in case.
Yep. Station. Continue talking. Not let me hinder you. So.
So when it comes to repo name, I was wondering, is there anything that hinders us of creating a real name? Or why do you want a sandbox or POC name in the name?
No, I guess it can be a real name. I'm not sure if the CDEvents term needs to be part of it, since everything in the organization is about CDEvents.
Maybe just action then?
Yeah, GitHub Actions maybe, or
yeah, because at the moment it's very specific to GitHub. So
yeah, otherwise it could be a common SCM web.
Unless we did, if we call it actions and then we have one for GitLab, one for, because once we make the first one in GitHub, it's going to be easy to do it with GitLab, and it depends if you want it in the same repo though, or if you want different repos for each one.
Yeah, is it called actions in GitLab as well?
I think it's called a runner.
Exactly.
I don't think it's called an action. Yeah, no. That's a good point.
And I guess Bitbucket has some other names as well.
Yeah, Bitbucket pipeline.
So maybe.
Yeah.
But put up some ideas on Slack and have a vote on it.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Good. Yeah. So you call it GH CDEvents adapter POC, yeah? GitHub CDEvents adapter POC.
But get some suggestions from others. What was on this point on the agenda?
It was the website. If you, Terry, had some questions or things you would like to discuss on the website, the organization.
Yeah, sure. Let me just share something.
Sure.
So I've started creating some issues to give some talking points, and this is what I'm proposing as our audience strategy. So what I'm doing here is looking at, what are the personas of the audience that we expect this material to be addressing, and I've identified a number of different categories that I think we're likely to see people coming in from these areas of interest, and then off the back of this, I'm documenting a basic strategy for how we communicate with those audiences. So it would be good if everyone could take a look at this and comment and let me know if you're happy with this as an approach, and then I can start to build off the back of this. And then the other issues, the key one is about understanding how we want to be able to publish into the website, because obviously what we're doing is developing spec revisions that are independent of the website content, and then exposing those spec versions in a controlled fashion through the website. So that means that we need to be consistent about how we're doing that and have a sort of general process for managing the release cycle of that, and also addressing any presentation and style issues that might come along with that, so that we're getting a consistent look and feel on the website, but we're not creating a lot of overhead that's adding to the difficulty of maintaining the spec.
Yeah, and I guess it was in that regard we also discussed on how the review process should look for the website and for specifically for the spec documentation to be rendered there.
Yeah.
If there should be some specific release handling together with the release of a new event edition or spec revision. Something on top of the ordinary pull request reviews we do for the spec, of course.
Yeah, so it would be good to kind of have that conversation over the next few days, if people have some time, just to add some comments to this, because I really need to understand what you want from this, so that I can make sure that I'm addressing any challenges that might occur from a presentation and rendering perspective and things like that.
Yeah, I guess one first input would be that it should be possible to select the revision of the spec graphically on the website through a drop-down menu or something, I guess, and have the correct version of the spec shown depending on what revision you select there. And then we also briefly touched upon if we should somehow render documentation from the SDKs and maybe from other things as well in the organization. That's certainly a stretch for this work that you're doing, but we should maybe have it in our minds anyway when thinking about how to visualize the different revisions for such things as well, if those should go hand in hand in some way. So selecting a revision of the spec should then also affect maybe other parts of the same website, which could contain other parts of documentation for, say, an SDK or something else. So that we don't propose a solution which only selects the revision for the spec documentation itself, but for the whole CDEvents or whatever organization, if you guess what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. So there could be some interesting challenges in doing that. So we need to structure it so that it's compatible with the the underlying Doxy platform.
Yeah.
So that will probably need a little bit of thought. What's the process that you're using at the moment for publishing the spec?
We do tag the source files with the version number, and we obviously create a GitHub release on it. But there's no real written process for it, I think. I guess we just do the obvious things, and I don't think we have we might have labels on most of the issues that go into one spec revision, but it's not waterproof, I guess, to just look at those labels. But that's of course something that could be fed back from this work. If we want to have certain amount of information in a certain way, we might need to label certain issues in the spec repo in a certain way, or of course there could be such needs on the other end as well, other way around. So
am I correct in thinking that the spec itself lives in its own repository?
Yeah.
And you're evolving the spec in that repository.
Right.
And then what's the process to take a version of that and put it onto the website?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, actually. I mean, I haven't done it. It's Andrea who has done it. We have done it twice now. One for the 0.10 version and once for the 0.11 version. I guess that Andrea would go to the CDEvents.dev repo and update some tag there and then regenerate it. But I can't say, I don't know.
Wasn't there some nightly job? We didn't talk about nightly job.
To always look to get the latest from the spec. That could also be one way, maybe that is okay, because yeah, this was actually, I mean, the setup of the website, the rendering of the documentation was done, of course, before we made the first release. And then there were no tags really to look for. So maybe it's just a nightly job that takes the latest. That could actually be the case today. You might be right. So then it's not at all a finished process.
Yeah, and obviously, any solution could be deemed the correct one at this stage, but it would be good to actually have a firm decision on what the desired behavior is, because that could have a big influence on how we need to structure some of the site.
Yeah, I guess you would have quite free hands then, or free mind if you have ideas on what would benefit from the document generation there. But I would guess that, of course, one way is to have a configuration file in the CDEvents.dev repo for the documentation that states what tag should we now get from the spec repo when we render this.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if we should also re-render old versions of the documentation, or if we should just render and add things that are new, or how that is done. Should the whole documentation be rendered every time, including all old revisions?
I think that's a very good question, and probably key to how much trouble we're likely to create for ourselves.
Yeah.
A lot of it will depend on whether the existing process has considered this already, or if it's just pulling the latest version.
I can certainly say with 99.9% certainty that it's not considering that at all yet. This is too new for that. And obviously it sounds probably easier to just re-render everything, so we know that we have the correct things of everything every time, and that might work the first, say, 10 or 20 revisions, but then we might end up in very slow publishing on the website eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think there's definitely an outstanding question there as to what the desired behavior is. And this is one of the challenges that really hit the Jenkins X team, was because with Jenkins X, you had a similar problem where, you know, you had a basic API for the tool set, and then a lot of explanatory documentation that was independent from the application itself. But every time there was a significant change to the API, all of your other documentation went out of sync. And you also ended up in a situation where Google was mainly indexing previous versions of documentation. And so when you were trying to search for information, you were getting stale information rather than the latest.
Okay.
We seen that in the Captain project as well. So because we have so many different versions, when new people Google it, as you said, it indexes the old one, and then they complain that it doesn't work. So yeah, I've seen that happen before as well.
So are there any best practices on how to fool Google there to always take the latest then? Or?
Well, there's two levels here. There's first of all, how do you want to present this viewpoint to your audience? And then there's how do you manage the search SEO part of that. So this is one of the areas where you can go down a massive rabbit hole, because if you're trying to present a historical perspective on your content, you effectively need to version everything on the website and make sure that when somebody comes in, they're getting a consistent view across the whole website.
Right. How does systems like Kubernetes do those things then, or in these bigger systems that have documentation online with multiple versions, I guess?
So typically you end up with version-specific documentation that's namespaced, but you can still run into the challenges that your overarching narrative is drifting out of sync with the underlying API documentation. And in the Kubernetes case, what they tend to do is just put lots and lots of footnotes on the narrative, trying to warn you of incompatibilities. And now that gets very messy, and you're talking about having to have a full-time documentation all of those issues. So so this is one of those areas where the early strategy needs to reflect, how much time and investment is going to be available to maintaining the documentation.
Oh, yeah.
So it may be that it's more cost effective to only present documentation on the website relating to the current version of the spec, and then redirect people to the Git repo for the spec if they need to access historical spec version documentation.
Right. Yeah. I think we're quite in a quite good situation in a way, because we have our primer and our README and all those things in the same repository as the spec itself currently. What we don't have there is, of course, obviously the actual website text, which is specific for the website. So whenever that comes out of sync with the spec, if we do some groundbreaking changes, which then makes the documentation on the website invalid or need to be updated for some reason, then we will have that problem, I guess, anyway. But for now, we have most of the text in the same repo, and that's one benefit then, I guess. I don't know. I mean, before we reach a 1.0 version of CDEvents, it doesn't make too much sense to have a very, very easy access of old revisions of the spec. Obviously, when we implement our proof of concepts and different things, we need to be able to find the old versions as well, if we are compatible with the 0.1 or 0.2 or 0.3 version or whatever. But it's not as important as when we have reached 1.0 and after that. So I'm thinking now on your assignment there, Terry, we requested to have a versioning of the website, right, in place.
Yeah.
I guess the least that could be done then is to just show what version of the spec are we now looking at? What is this latest version that we see now? Is it version 0.1 or 0.2, or what is it? And that could, of course, be retrieved from a file in the spec repo, or a tag maybe.
Yeah, and but you could certainly do the classic pattern of namespacing the view of the spec within the website. So then you end up with a path that is v1/ and then all of the spec, and v2/ all of the spec.
In the URL, you can
yes.
Yeah.
And then you can make those links visible within the navigation menus so that you can choose to go to v1 or v2 at that level. That would certainly suffice for being able to surface the spec documentation through the website with a historical view. But you still have that challenge that the rest of the website is not versioned in the same way. So you've then either got to say, well, the rest of the website is always referring to the latest version of the spec, so all the narrative is on the current version, but you can access historical versions of the spec itself. Otherwise, you get into trying to surface multiple versions of the content of the website, which multiplies your maintenance overhead.
Yeah. And we don't want to spend most of our time on the actual website documentation. We want to, of course, work on the protocol and the POCs primarily. But it needs to go hand in hand, of course. So the website information is up to date always, with the least minimum effort required, of course, or whatever. But I mean, now since we do this big restructuring, I guess we won't redo it again for the 1.0 version in, I don't know, say a year or something. So it would be good if we have a good idea on how to actually handle this also for some time after 1.0 now. Otherwise, I could say that it's good enough to just show the latest, but as long as we show what exact semantic version is used is shown here. But I would like to see that there is a way to handle it through differentiating different versions through URL parameters, maybe then, or something similar. But then again, we need to say or decide, should we re-render all versions every time we render the documentation, or should we just render the last one and then somehow keep the old ones? But then we need to make sure that the links still work from the old one, I don't know, between and wherever. If you replace some files, what happens? It sounds a bit easier to re-render everything all the time, I think.
Well, if you're doing it dynamically, then well, I suppose it's going to run as a independent process, isn't it? So it's, yeah, you are going to hit that situation where as you get more versions, you are going to slow down the overall rendering process. But you won't be re-importing content against the historical spec versions. So in theory, you could go through and manually prune out ones that you felt were deprecated, and that would allow you to keep on top of it.
So what should you say? Do you mean that we do not need to re-render everything every time then, or? Well,
because of the way this is deploying as a CI/CD process, it is effectively going to render the whole website every time you merge a pull request. But that will be very rapid with only a handful of versions in place. And if it starts to become a problem, you can manually prune old versions out of the website repo, and so you can deprecate versions and remove them, and then you'll speed things up again.
Yeah, I guess there needs to be a process for that as well. I guess there could be some kind of what should we call it, disallow list file or something that says these versions should not anymore be rendered, or these are too old, just render the ones which are maximum 1 year old or 2 years old or something, and skip the rest.
I mean, I think this is probably an infrequent enough process that you can do it manually.
Yeah.
Because if your publication of a new specification is always just taking the latest release version and adding that to the repo in a new namespace, then what that will enable you to do is just, you'll have an accumulating set of namespaces in the website repo.
Yeah, but
you can
think, yeah.
I mean, you can do a manual PR to take some of those out once they've gone beyond a certain.
I think one problem here is that we don't actually import the documentation into the CDEvents.dev repo. Instead, we have Git submodules in the CDEvents.dev repo, which fetches the data from the other repository, from the spec repository. So if we would like to render multiple versions, we either need to import them as multiple separate submodules, I believe, pointing at different tags, or do that in some other way. I don't really know. When updating the Git modules, I don't know how that could be done actually. I'm not too.
Yeah, I'll need to take a look at how you've actually got that set up.
Because
so
because the
I
documentation
can-
is not copied into the website repo, as far as I know. I don't think it is.
Okay.
I might be wrong, but I don't think so. Anyway, let's see, we're out of time already. So the rest of you on the meeting, if you have any ideas, please help out on this issue and comment it here to see if we could, what we could do. And if you have experience from other projects like Jenkins X or Captain or something else on how to do this in a good way from the start, not jumping on the same issues as others has been done before.
Sure. Yeah, it's a hard problem.
Mm-hmm. But it's perfect that we try to solve this now when we are in such an early stage, so we don't get hit by it later on.
Yeah.
If we can solve it now. Okay. So I guess we need to stop there, but also reach out, Terry, on Slack if you need more attention on it, if we fail to help you there.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for looking into this. And thank you for today. And see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Cheers all.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.